Okay, perfect. And it's on. Wow, okay, good morning, everyone. If we've never met before, and I've seen many, many new names and from all over the world, and that makes me so happy. I'm Nama Blonder. I'm an architect and urban planner with Smart Density. We're based in downtown Toronto, Canada. And we've been doing these roundtables about urban design, different topics for over a year now. And now this year we decided to spice it up a little bit, and instead of focusing on a specific topic, we'll go to a specific country or region in the world. And it's very, very interesting. Given the registration, I think many people found it interesting. So thank you for being here. The first country is India, which is like overwhelming. I know we're probably going to need to do like 5 roundtables just about India, but we gathered really interesting speakers. So thank you again for joining us. I know it's 10 a.m. in Toronto and it's probably 7 or 8 p.m. in India. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Let's get started. Siddharth, over to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm just sharing my presentation. Hope I'm audible to you. Is my presentation visible now?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So I'm gonna be trying to do this in 10 minutes. Yeah. So broadly, I am an architect and I come from a background of industrial design. So I am not a formal urban planner. So probably I am the odd one out here. Uh, what we do is that we do a lot of museums in urban spaces in context to heritage, and that is what my talk is all about. So, as I say that my talk is about Varanasi, and I'm going to be showing broadly 3 projects with main topic as Varanasi, and I say Varanasi as a museum. I will tell you that why that name exists and the scenario of this presentation. Yeah, so we strategize and create experiential and narrative spaces. Once we do that in heritage. So any work which we have done in urban design as such is in heritage. Present. So I'm going to be talking about 3 projects. One is Tajganj, which is the surrounding area of Taj Mahal. Then second is Husainabad, which is old Lucknow area where you have the Imam Bada and the Chota Imam Bada and the Rumi Darwaza. And third, of course, is Varanasi, which is, of course, one of the oldest civilizations or cities in the world. Yeah, and then, whenever we talk about heritage, I take this as metaphor, and that is what my talk is all about. That I treat urban heritage gesture as museum. So heritage is a museum to us. So I'm trying to link my thoughts and how we do it. So we take heritage as an artifact. It's like artifact is in the museum and heritage in the town. And then we say that heritage is a museum to us. So it's a comparison between heritage and artifact. Whenever we get a heritage project, whenever we get an urban project, we treat that as an artifact. So the tomb, or the Taj Mahal or the Rumi Darwaza, or the Varanasi temples were artifacts to us. Once we get into a deeper layer, we probably provide with 3 P's. The first P is to protect. So once what we do is that we protect the monument, we conserve the monument, we kind of demark or uncluttered the monument. That is one, as you do in the artifact also. You provide artifact cleaning up and the pedestrian itself. The second thing what we do is heritage as a museum to us to preserve. So like in artifact, you kind of preserve the artifact. You preserve the showcase. What we do in heritage, we plant up everything. We make everything kind of hardscape and green. The third thing, of course, which is very, very important, which we kind of is the forte of us as we think so, is the narration, is the promotion. So the way you explain the artifact is very important to explain the heritage. So first is to preserve it and protect it, and then the promote is something which is third and the most important thing to us, that whatever heritage you have done, you of course preserve it. At the same time, you promote it. You kind of do a branding of it. You do a lot of signages. You do a lot of storytelling to that. So that is what I will show you today. This is the first project, which is Tajganj. I'm not, of course, going into much details because we just have 10 minutes. But of course, how you light up Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is not allowed to be light up because Taj Mahal is a gesture of Indian continent, are owned by 7 authorities in government. It's impossible to light Taj Mahal in that sense, which is, of course, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But of course, the light or the night towards the Taj Mahal was not there. When the tourists come to Taj Mahal, they cannot go actually walk towards the Taj Mahal at night. But what we have done now is we have kind of cleaned up the whole road. We have cleaned up the encroachment and we have light up the whole urban precinct. And of course, how the lighting need to be done. So all the lighting is done on the floor. It is not something which is glaring on your eye, which is kind of fighting with the Taj Mahal itself. So how you light up and clean up the overall atmosphere. So this is the present, the people coming from both sides to the Taj Mahal, to the east and the west gate. This is the before picture and this is the after picture. This is what it was 6 years back when we does this project. You can see the road and the pedestrian and then what we have done right now, which is of course cobbling and then the bollards and the lighting itself. This is again on the left is the before picture, on the right is the after picture. Then this is how you see. So it was, of course, everything was encroached. So to us, let us conserve the monument. That's it. So you get away with the encroachment. You cobble everything. You have the hardscape and the green space. You put basic lighting. You put bollard. You try to get out the cars and the urban traffic. Get the gestures out of the tanga or a balgadi or a cycle, and that is how you can preserve Taj Mahal. This is what it is, and of course there's a story to the light design also, that this is actually the negative of the positive light design which was inside Taj Mahal, which is inside Taj Mahal, which was done of course at the time of Shah Jahan itself. So how you design these gestures, and we love to do it because I come from a background of industrial design. So the way the lighting need to be designed, the way the signage need to be designed, then of course we design benches as signages. So everything comes from the brand identity. We created a brand identity for Agra, the logo of Agra itself, and that is how all the materials were decided, all the signages were decided, how the benches were designed in itself. The second is Husainabad. Again, there was a whole precinct in which there were 10 monuments which were all encroached. So getting away the encroachment, getting the hardscape and the green space in, and then kind of getting all those 10 monuments its own depth and context. So that is what we did. On the left hand side is Rumi Darwaza. You can actually see the horrible median going inside the Rumi Darwaza and a pole in between Rumi Darwaza. So kind of cleaning up the whole thing. This is before and after again. This is of course opening up the Rumi Darwaza itself, and of course doing the branding of Rumi Darwaza also, and the whole city as Lucknow. Again, the colors and the textures need to be thought through, need to be planned. Coming to the main case study, which is Varanasi, it is the story of one of the oldest living cities in the world. So broadly, what we did was, once we got on the site, there were 84 ghats and 84 stories. Nobody actually knows about these stories, and this is, of course, every and each ghat is a story of 5,000 years old. So it was all cluttered, it was all different. People have written the name of the ghat in different typologies, in different typeface. Then, of course, it need to be planned and rethought. The good thing about, or the bad thing about Varanasi is that 3 months when there is peak monsoon, the whole Ganges, which is the holy river, go top. So the whole Varanasi kinds of get underwater. So what identity branding and the urban space which you do, it actually can sustain underwater. So that was something which is very, very important. So whatever you are designing, which will be underwater for 4 months. And then of course, no location sense, and these are the pictures when kind of the Ganges goes up, and then a lot of temples and almost the whole ghat area of Varanasi gets underwater itself, and lack of information, of course. So what we thought was that let us think of a material which will actually sustain when it is in 4 months underwater itself. So that is how we got cotton steel into play, and then we of course got into the tinted concrete and the stone beneath. So the stone is the layer which is beneath, because everything is stone. Then a contemporary material is cotton steel, which goes under the water and nothing happens to it, and you can do a lot of signages, etc., etc. And then the last layer of concrete, because on the orange is the color of Varanasi. And that is how we do it, So there are 280 installations which we have done, which are signages, storytelling installations, a lot of speech space, and a lot of signages on the steps, and all these signages actually gets underwater. So it's beautiful since last 3 years. It is actually getting underwater, and then when the water goes away, you can actually see the whole project coming alive again. So this is what it is. There's a lot of many orientation sculptures. There are information plaques. There are step signages. There are location-based signages, and there is a timeline sculpture. Again, I'm not going into the details itself, but how to tell people that what are the stories of these 80 ghats, um, and to design a marker like that. As you enter into Varanasi, you have the story of 80 ghats, where each and every ghat has been detailed out. So anybody who's coming to Varanasi ghats, as he entered from the Assi Ghat itself, which is the ghat to enter, a person kinds of get to know each and every story of a different ghat, getting into the minute details of how to design it, how to light it, how to actually celebrate the facades of our ghat. So we actually documented all the facades of each and every ghat, and then after we have done the signages, we actually put that up there itself. So every ghat kind of is being documented in terms of the elevation. It's been explained there, and then of course the name of the ghat comes there. These are some pictures if you see right now. Um and then a lot of stories have been told in Varanasi, and I felt when we were walking through the stretch of this 8 kilometers of Varanasi Ghats, we realized that everything is about steps. People sleep there, people eat there, people kind of take bath there. So everything is about these steps. So we thought that let us not do anything which is heavy, which kinds of abstract with this signage itself. It would be better that we kind of integrate every information with the step itself. So it's like taking a part of the step and putting up there. So this is something what we did. So it is of course in Hindi and English. The top view is Hindi, and then the bottom is English itself. So and these are steps which are higher from your height. So these are like signages in front of your eye, because these steps of course goes high. So rather than adding something which can have a clutter, we kind of did that as a part of the steps itself. Yeah, and that is how you. So it is all about steps, and it gets integrated in the steps itself. And of course, the information about the mythologies, facts, and activities, the timeline, 280 of them, a lot of detailing in terms of how the stories need to be told, the branding of the overall city, how it is not about the ghat, it is about realizing yourself. So the whole identity was trying to realize oneself. So how the yogi or the self gets mixed with the temple, and the whole branding of the Varanasi comes alive. I will just show you a minute of a video now. thank you. Over to you, Vidya.
Thank you, Siddharth. That was a lovely presentation. I'm gonna share my screen now. Can someone confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. So, my name is Vidya. I'm a founder and principal at Urban Design Collective, and I'm here to present our work, a selection of projects from our body of work here. My presentation, of course, is titled Designing Cities for People with People. That's what we do. So a closer look at city planning paradigms through history reveal that apart from various socioeconomic and technological frameworks that have shaped our cities, there's one concept that we have constantly revisited time and again, the idea of designing inclusive cities. Early Greek cities were among the first to lay emphasis on the human dimension in city planning. They did this by creating one of the earliest urban typologies, the agora, literally meaning a gathering space. The agora was the center of athletic, artistic, spiritual, and political life of the city, the earliest known example of a commons. Renaissance planning to emphasize piazzas as great outdoor living rooms that were capable of transcending political boundaries. Subsequent to this, for every grand diagram that shaped the urban form of a city, there was an equally impactful counter paradigm that brought back focus to the human experience of cities. The Parks movement, spearheaded by Frederick Law Olmsted, Kevin Lynch's theory of imageability, William White's studies on the social life of small urban spaces, and Jane Jacobs' battles for social consciousness in urban planning. So, as a collaborative platform working to create livable cities, our work is premised on the notion that the most resilient cities that are capable of addressing the major challenges of urbanization today, which is climate change, depleting resources, and increasing populations, will be the ones that redefine themselves as inclusive cities. Our work is therefore a constant endeavor to manifest inclusivity in the design of the public realm of our cities. Um, Three questions sort of constant drivers in this endeavor in our work. The first question being, how can we become local when we design? How can we include the elements, which is climate, water, and soil, when we design? And how can we include the invisible and the ignored when we design? So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through five tenets that form the basis of our approach. The first tenet is to ensure inclusivity in data collection and mapping. So I have a first project here, which is called Where is Your City? This is actually a tool that we developed very early on in our practice as a way to ensure inclusive data collection. It's basically a very simple installation that we've put up and used in various ways in various cities for various purposes as well. It's basically a set of four questions that are strategically, asking people to respond to it. And also that it includes a spatial dimension because there is a map of the city that accompanies it. Now, as a tool, this is one of our most effective tools as we've seen, and as also because of its variety of applications. Its appeal across an age demographic, like we've had children respond, we've had like senior citizens respond, everyone responds. There's a certain attraction that this tool seems to have, and it solicits responses but also discussions with the people that come and respond to these questions that we have. So in our first outing with this particular tool, we were trying to understand the sort of neighborhood level conservation assets. We also expanded it in another city where we looked at city level tangible and intangible heritage assets. And in another city, we also looked at, a mapping of places of joy and places of sorrow in a city. Um, This is a second sort of a project that we worked on. It was actually an interesting tri-city endeavor. So there was Chennai, Santo Domingo, and Mexico City, and a project was placed at in the context of the Habitat 3 conference, which took place in Quito in 2016. We were trying to understand, or rather, I think our debate was about big data and small data, and we were trying to talk about the deficits of um, the SDG targets and indicators, and how they don't necessarily do justice to the on-ground experience of citizens. We particularly looked at the public transport, or rather the movement systems in across the three cities, and presented a comparative assessment that were all measured against the various indicators for measuring mobility systems in a city. Again, the methodology for this involved reaching out to a really wide demographic of people, trying to understand how they move about the cities that we were trying to map, and what we called a transit experience survey was conducted. We had roped in a lot of people and trained them to conduct the survey. So it was a nice web of people that were involved in collecting data, as well as providing us the data with which we could work with on this particular project. This is a third project here, which is called Eyes on the Canal. It was basically an exercise in participatory planning to make the canal, this Buckingham Canal, which flows through the city of Chennai. What the idea was to make this canal a livable space for the residents of Chennai. The initiative involved various activities such as conducting awareness walks, community engagement meetings, and an open interest and ownership for the canal, which has, what we called suffered from collective abandonment. This project here was a regional planning framework for about a 2,500 square kilometer region across Pondicherry, Viluppuram, Auroville, and Cuddalore in the southern part of India. And I think one of the most gratifying experiences for me has been working on this project very early on in 2012, actually, this one was, where we held extensive consultations with people, held at collectorate offices, and people coming across and, giving us such valuable feedback, where we were able to draw up a regional planning framework with a significant amount of recommendations from these various consultations that went into it. So moving on, our next tenet is to include and enable all stakeholders in problem solving. This project here was a community outreach strategy for ecological lake restoration master plan, that where we fit in and put together the outreach strategy and the community engagement aspects of it. There was another team that worked on the actual sort of lake bed corrections and restoration of the lake bed itself, as well as the flora and the fauna, biodiversity improvement. But our role particularly was to work in collaboration with the community, to listen and seek to understand the character, the stories, the values, and the goals of this community, so as to be able to guide the future of this lake, as we approached it from a watershed restoration approach. So a variety of engagement techniques, from household surveys to focus group discussions to referendums and community meetings, specific meetings with women self-help groups, and so on. We learned so much about their past connection with this lake through this process, and the reasons why these connections have been severed, and what can be done, and how the demographic of this particular little village in the peri-urban belt of the city of Chennai itself has changed, and therefore and when I say change, largely because of the effect of urbanization and sort of horizontal spread of our cities, and how this has affected native settlements such as this one, and what could be done to bring back these connections. So this is the set of pictures here. The one on the left is a picture of how it was before the watershed restoration was started. Picture on the right is what it looks like now, with, all of the lake bed corrections and sort of islands for bird habitation and fauna restoration that were created. But if you look at the set of pictures on the right side of this, the slide, the four pictures. I think this was wonderful moment for me because I went back to this place 2 years after we had done the outreach strategy. And one of the key things that we were told during our interactions was that women and children had stopped going here because it had largely become a very abandoned space, and mostly inhabited by men in the evenings, late evening, who just indulging in drinking and not very pleasant environment for women and children to be in. But this is what I saw 2 years later, women enjoying themselves out through the lake in excess. And one of the most sort of heartening practice. And this is a project that, where we looked at, children as sort of catalysts for urban transformation. This is some renderings from a project that was set in a pilot exercise in an informal settlement called Ayodhya Nagar in Chennai. This is a settlement that was that had undergone in situ redevelopment. But despite the redevelopment, there were a lot of unused corridors within the settlement. These areas were identified for interventions, and the corridors were transformed into spaces for exercise, sports, or play. As this was also as a measure to ensure the maintenance of these corridors because of their continual usage by kids. Again, this entire exercise was developed and designed with kids. You can see that, where these are interactions with kids, where they're voting for which kind of activities that they would like to have within these corridors, also which corridors they would like prioritized first for intervention and so on. So these are some, and here's another, again, we really like working with young people. So this is another sort of a stakeholder workshop where we worked to design streets with children. So, these are children that are talking to us about the routes that they take while they go to school and get back home, and other routes that they use for recreational purposes and what they would like to see improved. You can see they're working on some collages here that tell us about how they can reimagine these streets that they use as their sort of public spaces in their everyday commute. This is a tactical urbanism exercise that we used as an NMT, non-motorized transport enabling strategy. It was executed as a demonstration project as a way to enable the shift towards reclaiming street space for pedestrians, and also subsequently led to us creating a guidebook on implementing tactical urbanism projects in Indian cities as well. These are some photographs of what these interventions look like. Again, these were largely based on surveys that were conducted. People told us that shade was an issue, seating spaces were an issue, and so on. So as you can see, these were largely addressed through these measures. This is a capacity building project for local facilitators, as well as local self-help group leaders in Ranchi. And the project aimed to create maps, data, and research about neglected civic issues in partnership with residents and government. Better information about the poor and those in the informal sector will lead to more informed and targeted interventions by the government, more effective advocacy by the poor, and improved governance outcomes for low-income city residents. So over here, we worked with a lot of adolescent girl children and taught them how to measure draw their informal settlements, gave them pictorial legends to put on these maps, and sort of how to conduct household surveys so that they would have more quantitative information to make more informed decisions and
Vidya,
seek
can you hear
informed.
me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Okay.
can, yes.
Sorry, I was talking earlier and I think no one heard me. I wanted to ask you to wrap up to be respectful of everyone else.
Right,
15 minutes.
right,
So
right. I'll do that.
last
I'll do
remark.
that. Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. I'll do that. So I will skip this. This was a community workshop to raise awareness on heritage that we worked with to create these large-scale puppets. And third tenet is to provide equal access to services and opportunities. Again, I think I'll skip this. This is a project that we worked on in Chennai where we worked on it's a rights-based approach, the Right to Disability Act 2016, which mandated that all public spaces need to be made accessible to the public, and therefore we put out this promenade for persons who are differently able to reach the beach, which is the largest public space in our city. Again, I think this is a traveling library. I want to talk a little bit about this and then before I wrap up. So last year we worked with the Ramanathapuram Collectorate to launch a traveling library as a measure to improve reading habits and to provide library access to public school children and also to old age homes, early intervention centers, and leprosy homes where people do not have access to a reading space. So we retrofitted this bus, created, an activity space, a reading space, and a platform stage, accommodate 25 people to sit inside and put in like about 1,000 books that they could then, sit down and read. Fourth tenet is to look at conscious steering of inclusivity into our processes. These we do through a lot of capacity building activities with city officials, and making them understand public spaces as shared spaces, and to, sort of drill in the idea of being inclusive while they're looking at public infrastructure itself. Extending this to sustainability in practice, we looked at an eco house prototype. We again worked with civil engineering students to teach them about alternative techniques and so on. And lastly, I think the use of inclusive language is a very important aspect as well. And so this kind of really summarizes the 5 tenets of our practice. So I will close with this. Over to you, Mansi.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Mansi Sahu. I hope you can hear me. I'm the co-founder of Studio Pod. Pod stands for People-Oriented Design. And today, I'm not going to be talking about a lot of our projects, but just one project. So I like to start with we are Studio Pod. We are optimistic, hopeless romantics. I have a team of 40 people. 2 of my co-founders, Sarfaraz Momin and Mahesh Vagdare. We started Studio Pod 10 years ago. It is purely an urban design, urban planning practice based in Mumbai, India, and we also have offices in US. There are different kind of projects that we do: strategic planning, detailed master plan, transport planning, landscape urbanism, toolkits. And it's very important to do this at any level of project, whether it's a streetscape, whether it's an open space, whether it's a master plan. So before I start my presentation, I'd like to just set a context between Toronto and Mumbai very quickly. So Mumbai is 20 million population. Toronto is around 3 million. So we are 7 times more people. Toronto is around 630 kilometer square area. And Mumbai is also around 603. So we have actually smaller area. The density of people in Toronto is around 4,429 people per square meters. And in Mumbai, it's around 34,000 people per square meters. The open space access in Toronto is around 28 meter square per person, whereas in Mumbai, we have 1.2 meter per person. Also, the way the open space is distributed in Mumbai is really far away from the highest, densest areas of Mumbai. But like I said, we are Studio Pod, we're optimistic, hopeless romantics. Even with this context, we love our tiny lanes. We love where there is eyes on street. We love where there's no space. We do celebrate walkability in a very different way. We love very small, closely packed blocks, buildings that we call fine grain. And we love shops, kirana shops, and all the active edges that make the life much better and livelier. So within this context of Mumbai, we got the opportunity to do a master plan and an execution project called One Green Mile. It was a combination of multiple consultants who were part of this project. The project took around 2 years in total, from planning to execution to approvals. And this is what the area looks like. It is an area which is both new and old, completely changing with time. And within this area, we set out to create 1 mile, which is going to be like a model equal street within Mumbai's context. A street that allows everybody to walk, a street that allows places to pause, and a street that works within the existing challenges of our city. Challenges like unauthorized parking, unused spaces, encroachment, unsafe crossings, multiple random parkings along the way. And one of the things that we got asked the most is, how will you change anything? There's so much congestion. What will you do here when there is no space? And we said for more than 1.5 million users per day, that was the count of people that were using the stretch. We will create space for all. So there were multiple processes that we followed in order to execute this small 1 mile. We had to do surveys, we had to do traffic counts, we had to do multiple models of how people are going to turn, what is the kind of signal length, what is the kind of wait length. And the entire process was actually divided in 3 parts. So there was a part that was analysis design. We did tactical urbanism trials so that people actually have confidence on us, that we can actually execute this project, and on the process of urban design itself. And final implementation was something that happened in parts, and in some ways still ongoing. So one of the first things we had to do was streamline vehicular movement. As you had seen in the pictures before, everything was haywire, everybody was parking wherever. We created a contiguous pedestrian realm. We created crossings, safe intersections. And within this 1 mile, we tried to do a pilot of a cycle track. We also gave a network that would work at a neighborhood level. But within this pilot, we said, let's just execute it. And when the vision of the larger neighborhood comes into play, you will have something to plug into. And then there were multiple unused spaces like the under flyover that we actually thought that, why are these spaces in a city where we don't have open spaces? How can we repurpose and reuse these spaces? So the entire master plan was created, and it had different aspects to it, from creating 5 intersections, 2.4 kilometers of cycle, 112 trees, multiple signage points, multiple new bus stops, and a 1-acre park under the flyover. This is what the section of what our complete street within the existing context looked like. We did not expand the street. This was all existing. And the first day we did our tactical trials, I love this picture because we took space away from the car, and there was this kid that just came in and started cycling. And that was, the first day when we started the trials. So it gave us a little bit of encouragement that we're going in the right track. The other thing that we did was we had to create multiple drawings in order to prove that it is technically feasible. And this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side is September 2020. On the right-hand side is Jan 2022. Small changes that went a long way in making respectable spaces that were encroached by trucks, that were unsafe for women, that just had random people loitering around, became conversation points, meeting up points. Spaces became street for people. We saw so many people come here and stop. We created benches. I know it sounds like something normal, but benches with good safe spaces to sit with a light. And we created a space out of nowhere under the flyover, which was, became a park that is full of kids, full of women, full of people coming here, enjoying the space at all times of the day and night. We also created a study center because a lot of kids in this area don't have proper study spaces. So this is a concept that works in Mumbai. It's called Vachanalaya, or study center. And then we created a very detailed programming of this 1 mile of all the different users that would be using this space and what are the different kind of micro destinations that we can create for them. These were some of the indicators that we got after the project, like we created more than 2.3 acres of public realm. We created a 2,000 square meter area under one flyover. We planted more than 100 trees within this 1 mile. So, this was just a sketch or a process that you come out of these very crowded trains, you come out, and this 1 mile becomes that one point where people meet each other, they gossip, they, have that minute of rest, and it's a pause, safe, interactive space. But imagine if 2,000 square meters, 2,000 kilometers of length of Mumbai roads became like this 1 mile through urban planning, urban policy, urban design, building guidelines, and landscape architecture. And that's why I say we are StudioPod. We're optimistic, hopeless romantics, and we hope to infuse some joy and fun in all the urban spaces. Thank you. Over to you, Vachana.
Thank you, Ansi. Hi, everyone. My name is Vachana. I basically have about a decade's experience in the space of urban governance. I currently lead the Municipal Law and Policy program at Janagraha. So I think I have a very different, a very different kind of study to present before you, which is called as Annual Survey of India City Systems, which is basically an assessment of the state of urban governance in India. Before getting to the study itself, I'd like you to introduce you to Janagraha. Janagraha is, 1 second. Janagraha is a 22 plus year old organization with a vision to transform quality of life in India cities and towns. So a systems-based organization where we basically work with the citizens to catalyze, active citizenship in neighborhoods. We also work with the government to institutionalize what we call a city system, which is essentially urban governance reforms. So we are an organization with about 100 plus team members and located in 5 locations. We work very actively with the union government, including the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and other key, key bodies such as the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the Chief Economic Advisor's Office, the 16th Finance Commission of India, etc., as well as we have focused work in 4 state governments. We also have 3 other sister organizations: Jana Urban Space, which is focused on urban planning and design; Jan Aadhaar, which is a banking service organization; and Jan Aadhaar in the space of affordable housing. What I want to actually take you through today is our flagship study called as the Annual Survey of India City Systems, which basically assesses the quality of governance in India's cities and towns. So basically, there are several quality of life challenges that we sort of experience on a day-to-day basis, which could be bad quality of air to pothole roads to lack of affordable housing options. So basically, these are things that we experience. These are very tangible. But if you actually look deep into this, we need to exactly look at the systemic causes, the root causes as to why these are occurring in the first place. So we coined the term city systems, which is essentially urban governance, which are underlying factors that has a role to play in terms of the city's ability to deliver a good quality of life to its citizens. And the city systems has 4 components. One is urban planning and design, which is about how the plans, the spatial plans, are prepared, implemented, and enforced. And given that we are a democratic society, how citizens are participating in the planning process for the city. The second is about urban capacities and resources, which is about finances, human resources, and use of information technology for better process efficiency. The third is what we call as empowered and legitimate political representation, which is about decentralization and political leadership, essentially referring to the powers of mayors and councils. The last component is transparency, accountability, and citizen participation. So what we believe is that all of these 4 components need to come together for a city to deliver good quality of life to its citizens. And what are these city systems? These are essentially laws, policies, institutions, and institutional processes that are underlying the governance of a city. And we say this because of the study that we do called as A6, or the Annual Survey of India City Systems. We started the study in 2013, and now we had the latest edition was basically released in 2023. So far until 2023 edition, basically A6 had city as a unit of analysis, where we did score and ranked select India cities, largely focused on capital cities, largely, or the key cities. So over years we tried to increase or improve the representation from 11 cities in 2013 to 23 cities with global comparatives as well, which is New York, London, and Joburg as a developing economy example, not essentially to see it as a best case situation, rather to see how India cities can, as more like a comparative case, in case of these 3 global cities, and what is that India cities can also learn and adapt from global context. So in 2023, however, we took a little different take, where we basically assessed the quality of urban laws, which is essentially covering all the municipal legislations that govern India cities, and all the town and country planning acts and the allied, which is essentially 82 municipal acts, 44 town and country planning acts, 176 allied acts, rules and notifications, 32 policy schemes, other allied documents. And we also supplemented with the data analysis of 25 additional data sets, essentially, to look at how India cities are governed, but with a more focus on urban legislations this time. So what we first try to understand in A6 is patterns of urbanization, which is essentially look at there are certain distinct characteristics and features in India's urbanization which can be explored and which can be leveraged to solve for the urban governance challenges that the country is facing today. And then we look at what are the different kinds of challenges that India cities are facing in terms of urban governance. And when you place these together, which is from the insights given by the A6 2023 study and based on the current policy and governance context in this country, there could be 10 instruments of change which can essentially usher in urban transformation in India, and that's been identified in the A6 2023 study. Quickly going through the urbanization patterns, one important aspect has been that India's urbanization itself could be far more than that we understand currently. Before I say this, probably should set the context for our friends joining from the other parts of the world today. In India, actually, cities are basically a state subject, which is basically there's a union government, state government, and cities, it's not a distinct autonomous tier of government. While there is local governance system, it is basically coming under state governments. So therefore, while we have a 74th Constitution Amendment Act, which is where the Constitution recognizes or rather gives constitutional recognition for the city governments in the country. It's a state government which actually, details out the detailed municipal legislations and town and country planning, as basically urban planning legislations, and the other aspects allied, for the governance of India cities is basically under the purview of state governments. So therefore, there is a census definition by, at the union level where, on the basis of which we say India is 31% urban. However, census towns, which the census definition includes statutory towns, which are actually recognized as city governments by law, by the respective state governments. as well as census definition, which is they are not statutorily defined, which means there are about 54 million citizens in the 3,800 plus census towns, which while showing urban characteristics are not currently administered as a urban unit. It's often administered as a village, essentially a rural unit. And there are, I mean, I think it's amply understood that, when we compare our census definition to other countries, probably India's definition could be a little too stringent, but it's really important that we define and measure urban correctly, also in terms of ensuring better governance and planning of urban area. Second is there's a spatial pattern to India's urbanization. As you can see from the LHS below here, about 1/3 of India's population is held by 4 million plus cities and 1 million plus cities and by more than 100K cities essentially. Right, but these cities are of different nature, where million plus cities obviously have legacy benefits, there's better quality of infrastructure, service delivery, there are agglomeration benefits possible for these million plus cities, whereas the less than 100K cities, while they actually suffer from fast-paced urbanization, but at the same time very modest economic base and very weak capacities at the city government level. And when we look at urban clusters, which is from a spatial contiguity lens, basically urban population is within 60-kilometer radius of including 3,800 plus census towns. A million plus cities host about 50% of India's population, and that's a great opportunity for India to leverage in terms of the spatial contiguity is essentially a great possibility for India. Basically, it offers a huge opportunity to leverage the platform economies and agglomeration economies. That's one part of it. But given that there are different kinds of cities, even simply from the perspective of population itself, it also calls for the need for different kinds of governance and financing of these cities, which is and different kinds of legislation essentially governing these cities, which is not the case today. You basically have similar kind of legislation governing a million plus city as well as a less than 100K city, right? And then if you look at, like I said, the 470 urban clusters, while it exists, they actually cut across different administrative units. So it's quite interesting to look at the district pattern of urbanization, because the district is a recognized administrative unit. So actually there are already 181 districts which are more urban than the national average, is 31% of urbanization. There are 72 districts which are significantly more urban than the state average. And a lot of times when we look at state urbanization average, the reality gets a lot lost, because for example, if you look at Uttar Pradesh, which is urbanized less than about 22%, actually has 8 cities which are significantly urban. 8 districts which are significantly more urban than the state average. So this is also basically calling for the need or the possibilities to look at a rural urban continuum in some ways. We look at more integrated place-based approach because the rural urban dichotomy probably is not reflecting the realities and requirements currently, because it's not exactly the dichotomous, and there is a lot of contiguity between rural to urban. We do have an interesting example in Odisha, in the state of Odisha, where there is a rural-urban transition policy, where the areas that are expected to transition from rural to urban are essentially hand-holded. There is kind of infrastructure support that is being provided, so they are sort of at par with the urban areas, and they're able to become city governments. Otherwise, the current process is more ad hoc in nature, and we don't have a very systematic process of transitioning from rural to urban, and this has huge implications on ensuring planned urbanization and ensuring very systematic transitioning of governance system from rural to urban in the country. So it's quite interesting to explore these different possibilities, which are already shown by the pattern of urbanization in the country. Now, if you look at the general outlay, so I mean, India used to have a strong rural bias, but that is in terms of policy discourse, which is definitely changing a lot. There's a massive increase of budget outlays by the union government to cities, an increase of about 488% from say 2009-10 to 21-22. However, a lot of these focus has been targeted at service delivery and not as much on systemic reforms. And like I said earlier, the state governments will have to take lead in ensuring that these systemic reform agendas are advanced in the respective states and that they institutionalize these efforts. And what ASIC shows us is that there are 5 systemic challenges that must be addressed to deliver a good quality of life in India's cities and towns. One is India's cities lack a modern contemporary framework of spatial planning of cities and design standards for public utilities. Like 39% of state capitals in India do not have active master plans. No states or union territories in the country basically mandate a street and public space design standards. We do see, I mean, some of my fellow speakers have already shown, there are certain very interesting best practices already shown, but it's not getting institutionalized basically. Second one is weak finance.
I just we're almost at 11 a.m. here, so it's almost on the hour. I need, if you could please some closing remarks.
Sure. I just 2 minutes. I will close this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Second is weak finances of cities, both in terms of financial sustainability and financial accountability. Like say only 20% of the municipal expenditure is covered by property tax, which is the key taxation source for ULBs. Third is poor human resource management, not just in terms of the quantity of staff that's available. There's 36% of average state vacancy in city governments, but there is also critical skill gap. So there is a quality problem as well as an organization design problem where basically the span of control is quite weak. Fourth is our mayors and councils are quite powerless. There is only 42% of the 74th Constitution Amendment Act, which basically laid the foundation for urban governance in India, being implemented by the respective state governments. 1,400 plus cities in India, including big cities like Bangalore and Mumbai, have not had elected councils. So basically there is no mayor, an elected representative representing the citizens. And there is a complete absence of systematic citizen participation transparency in most of the cities. And based on what's basically what ASICS is trying to push for is a long-term strategic view of urban transformation. So even as we focus on short-term projects, it's really, really important that we focus on, long-term systemic reforms. There are 10 instruments of change identified for this. A spatial development plan. Second is street and public space design standards. Third is a constitutional amendment to further empower India cities. The fourth is metropolitan governance, to basically have a governance paradigm for million+ cities in the country, which we do not currently have, and to empower mayors and councils with more powers over funds, functions, and functionaries, and to equip their hands better to deliver on their roles through systematic training program focused on women and first-time councillors. Sixth is to have open cities framework and participatory budgeting, basically institutionalized platform for citizen participation. Seventh is to have municipal taxation and transfers as an instrument. Eighth is to have municipal borrowings and audited financial statements. 9 is to have a digital public finance management, and finally to have a municipal shared services and cadre and recruitment rules. It's 10 instruments to usher in urban transformation. So on that note, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we didn't have time for questions. We are here on the hour. So I would like to thank all of our speakers. If you're interested in the recording, it's available on our YouTube channel. It's been a fascinating hour to get from Toronto to India. So thank you for that little trip. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And thank you to the speakers again.